All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to your weekly market check-in here with myself, Greta Wall. I'm your host, and I'm joined by David Prince, the leader of T3 Live's Inner Circle virtual trading floor. David, happy Thursday. How's your day going so far?
Today's a really good day.
All right. We will definitely be talking about it. But the title of our stream today is Quiet Week. It has been a bit of a quieter week for the market. We had lots of excitement in June, and then this first full week of July, really no data, no earnings, etc. Kind of a market that seems to be digesting some of the recent big moves higher as we get set to continue. David, what is your read on this market, where we're at after, record highs in June and then a quieter start here to July?
It is that there's a game of rotation going on, right? There's no doubt some money traveling from certain areas, winners, and going into some laggards. And we see a lot of that going on across the board. So we're not seeing a pullback in the market, but underneath, a lot of recent leadership is actually softer. So while the indices are grinding higher and higher and higher, and we're in this amazing bull market, you do have to pay attention to what you own, because there's a lot of leadership that's faltering and new leaders are kind of taking the baton and going with it. So it is now more than ever a market of stocks, not a stock market. We are definitely at that spot where there's a bit more risk than reward in the typical Qs and SPY, but there's certain individual equities that are now working that haven't worked for a while. So it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. I love that market of stocks, not a stock market, and that really hammers home that you need to be paying attention to individual names versus just buying the Nvidias and all of the Mag 7s and hoping they're going to go up.
Are you buying Nvidia today when it's doubled off April lows, or is there something else, right?
Yeah. I want to talk about recent wins that have been happening for you in the inner circle in the room. Let's start off with Ethereum and how you guys have navigated that price spike that we've seen. You and Rick both went home long some August calls on Tuesday. And then we saw that big price spike yesterday for Ethereum, and that worked out really nicely for you and Rick. I know you just trimmed these calls just like right before we got on our call here. So you had the ETHAs, Rick had the ETHE, both big wins for the room. Rick's went from like $2.80 to almost $4. Yours are from $1 to over $2. And then today I think you're trimming at almost $3. I heard your analysis in the room about Ethereum and that, had Rick interested. He said, what do I buy to have my exposure to that? And you told him. So what was that analysis for the room? What were you seeing in Ethereum on Tuesday that made you want to buy these calls? And then, of course, they worked out on Wednesday.
It's one of those markets where new themes are coming along. And the ultimate theme right now is catch-up. What's a catch-up play? And certainly Ethereum is like, the ugly redheaded stepchild compared to Bitcoin. But we're seeing the Tom Lees of the world, create entities to literally just buy ETH. And it's been the ultimate catch-up play. So we saw a chart that looked like it was really starting to go. When you think of it, it's the other big name in crypto besides maybe Solana. And you realize it's down 30% off highs. Bitcoin's at highs. The market is rewarding catch-up plays, which I'm sure we'll discuss, like the AMDs and Kavas. So it fits the theme of what's left with a viable story and some fundamentals that is not near highs. And I thought, wow, 2 and 2 here really probably makes 5 or 6, not 4. And it was simple as that. It's really about timing, that the market is enjoying these laggards and rewarding them significantly when the right news comes along. So that was what that was about. And it was buying ourselves some time so we could stay in it for an ultimate breakout, right? Because through 2,900, this could be mid 3,000s and get paid right away like we did. So a little bit of both.
All right, let's talk about some of those catch-up plays. AMD, we'll start there. You on our live stream in early June told everyone AMD was the better risk-reward AI play than NVIDIA. like you told everyone then, it doesn't mean it's the better stock, it's the better name
Certainly
in the
not the
space. It
better
just meant
company, right?
not the better company, just meant the chart had the better risk reward based on the move that we'd seen in Nvidia. AMD back then was like 117, 118, and now we're at 140, over 140. We're in the mid 140s. Obviously, a great call by you on that. Let's talk about how you've navigated that trade. And
I've sold 80%,
mhm.
because it's been like a home run. This happened quickly, but I really do believe that it's a stock, and I think we discussed this since, that you can continue to go back to. So I don't think Rick was in it with me, but an example, this week, the minute it did have a pullback towards 134, 135, he was buying calls, which are up big right now or were yesterday. So if you look at it, whether it's the chart, 70 points or more off highs, or earnings that are finally starting to really have some significant growth, or the buyback, or the insider buying, there's enough there. And then maybe more important than any of it, right, is Nvidia is an amazing company, right? Is one of the best growth stories that ever existed. But the law of large numbers does come through in these moves. It's just had an amazing one from, where I wasn't the only one. Tons of people were buying sub 100. It's big, and it's a big company. So even with good news, these percentage gains will probably taper off a bit, and it'll need to base. It does that every now and then, and everyone shorts it and then doubles again. So the point is, I think AMD still has a bit more room because the law of large numbers are not taking over, and the fundamentals and the fact that it's PE forever was, like I've said, it's been trading 100 times for a long time. It's now at a reasonable valuation versus where it trades historically. I still say it's a better risk reward. That said, up here, I'm price conscious. I'm not one of those guys who buys and says, be long term. Think about it over the next decade. Buy it after a 25-point move. I would wait for pullbacks. You got one earlier in the week. The market is showing signs of weakening underneath. There's tons of weakness. There's tons of leaders today that are actually really ugly, even with the Dow up as much as it is. NASDAQ's down. So I would be a buyer on dips. Anywhere 140 or under, I would start to look.
One stock or trade that I wanted to discuss with you, because I think it's really a good example of how you approach names. Often in the room, you'll post, I'm buying this, hoping it'll go lower so I can keep adding, etc. A name that you've been trading this week is AVAV, Aero Environment. You got into it, I think, was it Monday, early in the week. And then you had some down moves, you added to the position, built it up bigger and bigger. And then today, trimming because you have a nice move on the name. Talk about how you've done that and how you are able to, mentally watch a name go lower while you're long. And instead of freaking out and saying, oh, I got to get out of this, building a bigger position in it because you believe in a thesis.
Or literally, not the first decade because I really sucked. But for the last 2 decades, that's how I make the biggest money, is finding a core idea that I think the chart on a longer term time frame is great, but it's having a pullback, fundamentals, earnings, all of that set up. And then I look for levels to say, okay, I'm going to be at a third, a half, a full position. And AVAV, after crushing earnings, had an unbelievable move, like 50%. It's not a small cap billion-dollar company, so it was a big move. So listen, this is going to pull back. It's probably more short than a buy, but when it does, and it comes under 250, it starts to get interesting. So, just to keep it real, I think our first buy was like 243, 244. And I said, this could really pull back mid 230s. And I will continue to add. But I pointed out, just like Circle recently, that we were buying at 180 and it went all the way to 170 after going to 300. Just like Coinbase, that pulled back to, Coinbase was like 330, that we bought between 340 and, I gotta remind myself, on Coinbase, it was, 330 to 340. It was a monster win just a couple weeks ago. This is a position that fundamentally sets up, and as it goes lower, I'm going to buy more. And I counsel people to say, listen, we've done this a million times, but if you haven't done it, the way to do it's pretty simple. You have to be able to go to sleep at night and understand the lows aren't in, and this is where it can go. So you basically have to say, look at the chart, say, it can go this low and my story still is correct, right? So I had that number in my head, and it was basically somewhere, I'm going to say like 230. I said, it's probably not going to get to the 21 day, which is down at like 220, but it'll probably bottom between the 21 and 10. And if we get down there, I'll add. So yesterday I was buying as low as 230, 234. And today we bounced, all the way to 243. And it was a really big win. But you got to plan out those trades. And we're pretty good at that. Some people love momentum. They buy high, they sell higher. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not how I'm built. I like to build a buy size of my favorite positions, not own like 30 positions, have a focus, execute right. And that's how we get paid. Kira as well. Rick, is a little bit more spread out. We'll have 20 positions, but definitely that's how we trade. So AVAV are really all around, whether it's the wars going on, whether it's their core business, whether it was fundamentals, whether it was the chart, it all set up to me. So as it pulled back, we continued that.
All right. And then Kava. Let's talk about Kava. Kava's been a name that you've definitely been focused on throughout 2025. You like the business, you like the food, you like the stock. So what have you done with Kava recently? You and I have discussed this name a lot. So
sold a great deal. It is a big win for us.
Right.
The exact same setup as AVAV, just took a little bit longer. I said, listen, this is an expensive stock. But in my firm opinion, right, you have to have a thesis, because if you just buy charts, no one would be long Kava where we were buying, right? It looked awful. So I said, my thesis is pretty simple. This is the next great growth story in fast casual. And a lot of people know that. The question, right, the difference between people that make money on it or not, are there a lot of people say it's too expensive for me, I won't own it. I can't own a stock that trades 100 times like this. It doesn't make any sense. And then you can be old like me and see Amazon and a million other companies that were always expensive, that never got cheap, that hit its cheapest valuation now after going up God knows how many thousands of percent. So in my eyes, that's Kava. So off of 100 points off highs, under 80, I said, I don't know if it's next month, next week, but after the markets had this type of move, this is where I feel I can invest and see a great return and manage my risk and like it near term and long term. So that's what I did. It wasn't pretty. I bought some at 78, it would bounce to 82, I would trim some, 78, bounce to 83, trim some, and then it broke 78, went all the way down to 7. But I actually said, I'm sticking with my thesis. If you are trading for 24 or 48 hours, okay, maybe you don't want to buy it, but I'm buying it. So my next big buy was at 74. Fundamentals remain superb. The food for fast casual remains superb. The management team is the best in the business. And now the chart is pretty darn special. So we've had a monster reversal, stocks up like 25, 30% in a straight line. I've definitely sold a lot. I think we'll go to 100. I'll remain long for a while. Like I'll always own some forever, but I've sized down because big move.
Sorry, that's still needed. All right. So this week has been a slower week for the market, as you and I both, the indices kind of grinding higher, a little bit sideways, kind of digesting the most recent moves that we've seen. But an important thing that I feel like you and the inner circle have done this week is you're not over trading. You're not out there just buying things to buy them, to have a trade, to do something. You're sitting on your hands if you need to, and just watching the market and looking at the charts. And until today, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, definitely a quieter time in the room that I've seen in a while. But I feel like really important for traders to know how to not overtrade when the market is saying don't buy things here. How have you been able to develop that in your years of trading, to know when it's time to kind of sit back and watch?
By losing lots of money when nothing was happening. By being like, oh, Oklo bottomed, I'm going to buy it on the turn. And then it goes back down 2 and taking a loss. Or, oh my God, take a look at, I don't know, let's say RKLB, right? All of a sudden it looks awesome. And not RKLB, Rubric, RBRK. And look at this reversal. And now it looks like it's breaking out. It's going 100, then chasing it, and it goes back down under 90. This is a market where there's a lot of mid-cap leadership. A-Lab just did it, where people are chasing their tails. And it just tells me the market is changing. Buying higher, selling higher is not working. that a lot of stocks have come a long way. Like all the stocks I've mentioned are up 100, 150% in just a couple months. And you really have to be disciplined. So this week I said, okay, I can lose thousands of dollars when the market's not moving by like buying higher or buying a dip and trying to make $2 and then it bounces $1 but goes down 2, or I could do less. I could find a name I like regardless of what the market does. That would be Aero Environmental, ABAV. And while it's ugly and the market doesn't care, dig into it. And maybe I'm not going to make money on Tuesday when other people are making money, but I'll get paid. And then today I got paid, right? And it's to stick with our winners like the AMDs and the Kavas. So frankly, it was from losing money when there was no reason to. That's how I learned. Like, there's a lot of crap going on, right? Like CoreWeave. I've been saying for weeks, I don't know when it breaks down, but I don't like it. I really think this is going to 130, and then today it breaks down and goes to 130. And then a lot of people thought yesterday it was time to buy it. So it's just doing less and going with your kind of A+ ideas and being willing to be a little bit bored, which isn't always fun.
Yeah, not always fun to be bored, but not fun to more not fun, right? Is that yeah, more not fun to lose a lot of money. All right, the one catalyst that we were supposed to get this week was the July 9th trade deadline, and then Trump extended that to August 1st. We have gotten some tariff announcements though since then, and the market kind of shaking it up. What is the market's response to the latest tariff news tell you about how this market? Does the market care about tariffs? Are we moving on? Does it not matter until August 1st? What is the reaction telling you?
One, that there's nothing firm. There's nothing like, oh, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to get crazy. Basically, the taco trade continues and the economy continues, and inflation, although it might rear its ugly head, isn't getting crazy. And people are saying, you know what, for now, if I trade based on, being fearful of tariffs, I'd miss one of the greatest bull markets in history. So I think the market's kind of taking everything with a grain of salt at this point and buying the dips, and it's working. And until it stops working, they'll keep doing it. So I'm not saying it's not relevant, but it's less relevant. Clearly, every tariff headline that's taken the market lower has been a buy the dip, right? I mean, the Qs were under 550 for a brief minute earlier in the week, and we're 555. So for right now, it's, I think, more important that earnings season is upon us starting next week. And it's really going to be about, hey, can earnings back up some of these massive moves? Because they're going to be good. But the question is, good enough to back up monstrous moves? You got like companies, you got a lot of companies, and I don't even know why I'm mentioning Broadcom, maybe because Pelosi bought it, so people are talking about it today. But you got a Broadcom that had okay numbers last quarter, weren't spectacular. But it's the leader, right? Outside of NVIDIA, obviously. But if you want specialized chips, Broadcom's as good as there is. So the minute it pulled back on earnings, people bought it. And it came off the low of earnings, another $40. The question is, can that game of not having big beats and stocks grinding higher and higher keep going? I think we're going to have a huge test when earnings season begins with the banks next week. And therefore, I'm going to buy kind of, stocks I really believe in that I think can move even if the market hits a couple hiccups, because I think the second half of July might be kind of messy. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah. All right. You got ahead of me there on the earnings, but that was going to be what I asked you about next, was the expectation for earnings, because we're starting next week.
I believe a tough earnings.
Weird start. JP Morgan and the banks are starting on Tuesday, not Friday, like usual. I think last earnings season was like this too. They start on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday as well. Real quick, Eric from Twitter X asked, can I ask about CAMT? I saw that AMAT and KLA are going up. Is there a chance that it will also go up like them?
Wrong guy to ask. I follow almost every stock imaginable, and I've been trading KLA and AMAT since Eric was in diapers, but CAMT, not really one that I'm, KLA is like one of my favorite semi-equipment company there ever was.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a strong thought on CAMT, to be honest.
All right. We would much rather you say you don't have an opinion, then pull one out of nowhere. All right, you mentioned July, the second half of July, expecting a little bit of a rough second half of July. I did want to get your like overall July expectations. Typically a really strong month for the market, July and August, but June typically a pretty weak month for the market and was really strong. So what do you think about July as we
Just thinking we might have a 3-4% pullback between pre-earnings news, people taking money off the table, and some of these earnings maybe not being good enough to back up the stock. Like you can look at like Netflix. Nothing has happened to Netflix, and it's fallen apart this week. I just think people are basically looking past great companies with great fundamentals and saying it's time to lock some in because, you know, there's a point where I don't care how good things are, they're priced in. And I think in some of the large caps specifically, maybe less IWM and XBI, that's coming to fruition, whether it be CoreWeave today breaking down, whether it be Netflix breaking down. NVIDIA right here, I would imagine the next 10 is actually lower. I'm sure someone's going to scream at me, but it doesn't mean I don't love NVIDIA. It was the first individual stock besides the indices I bought when we crashed in April at 93 and 86. But now, risk reward, I probably wouldn't buy NVIDIA here. So I just think a lot's priced in, and we never know why markets pull back. It's almost like whatever you expect, right, is what doesn't pull the market back. It'll be something else. So it may not be tariffs. It may be, God forbid, a war. It may be China, Taiwan. I don't know what the hell it is, but I just look at everything and I'm saying, okay, it's probably time to be a little risk averse, buy on pullbacks, not chase highs, and maybe look for undiscovered gems the way we did Kava. Now people are looking at IWM, XBI. XBI is coming into the 200-day. Is that the next great catch-up play? Because it's done a whole lot of nothing for 5 years. So I just think some of the big cap leadership that's done nothing but go straight up. Look at another one, CrowdStrike. No different than NVIDIA or Broadcom. So-so earnings report, great, but not great to back up the stock price. Stock pulled back. Didn't only make up all the losses, but continued to go higher. And I think it's $70 off its last earnings report low. So we have a lot of companies that didn't impress last quarter, went down, and then continued to make new highs. I would gather this quarter is a little bit more difficult, and there's a bit more pressure.
All right. Now's the time to ask you for ideas and what charts you do like here and what you might be looking at on pullbacks. Give us some levels. What are the names you're interested in?
Sure.
Right here.
I still think Ethereum, if you're looking more than tomorrow, we get through this 2,900 or so, there could be a monster move. There's a big short in it. So I'd be a buyer of Ethereum here and on dips. I just think it fits a great dynamic here. It's had a big move. So I would not be like all in. I would wait for a bit of a pullback. There's no doubt there. Sorry to mention it again, but I look at biotech starting to break out. If XBI can get over the 200 and go to 100, then I think Immunome's literally up 50 or 60% by the end of the year. So, trading under $9, I think that's 15 or 16. I love the idea of owning Coinbase. It was a big position for us. So I would definitely be a buyer if it pulled back 30 or 40, which on Coinbase can happen any moment. This MP Materials deal, I think it re-rates the stock. Rick bought it today at like 41 pre-market. I was not quick enough. So I first got involved today, actually right under 43, trimmed some in the 44s. But if we pull back towards previous highs, which were right below 40, I would dig in there. I really don't think the stock's going to pull back too much. AVAV, I'm not going anywhere there. If this can pull back again to the low 230s, I'm an aggressive buyer. So those are some names I'm very focused on right now. Kava, I love long term, but after almost 30% move off the lows, you might be a bit late, but I would look for pullbacks there. AMD, would I first buy it? You might be a bit late, but I would be a buyer, without a doubt, if we pull back on AMD. So I would say those are some of my favorites, and keep an eye on XBI. It might be, a 2-day event, or there could be a lot more. Because like I said, although it had a beautiful day yesterday, in all reality, small cap biotech has done nothing since the beginning of time, it feels like. So you could easily go up another 10, 15% and it would mean much, and that would take us to 100. So I would definitely pay attention if XBI can cross the 200 day.
All right. Thank you, David. All right. I'm going to let David get back to trading because today has definitely been a more exciting day than the rest of the week. So I'm going to let him get back to that. If you want to get David's free newsletter, you can go to t3live.com/DP. This is sent out on Tuesday mornings. It's a kind of a readout of his morning call in the inner circle. You get levels and all of that on individual names, indices, and some different market analysis. So it's good stuff. t3live.com/DP to get that delivered straight to your inbox on Tuesday mornings. David, have a great rest of your trading day, a great rest of your week, and I hope earnings season brings some excitement for you guys starting next week.
Sounds good. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.